Good evening, Camby. Welcome to the October 20th, 2021 regular City Council meeting. We're going to get underway here. Thank you to the council. We did have an exec session that started at 7. And so if you're catching up with us now, we apologize for the delay. We were having technical difficulties in the Zoom era. We still have those. Our first order of business this evening is we have the swearing in of our newest city councilor, David Bajoran, and you can see him there on the screen. We're glad to have him on. We're expecting huge things from the first night from soon-to-be Councilor Bajoran. We have Judge Graff joining us here on screen. There he is. Judge, good evening. How are you, sir?
I am better than I deserve.
Well, good. Well, thank you for being here this evening, and I will let you take over the honors of swearing in Mr. Bajoran.
Okay. Well, Mr. Bajoran, you're going to need to unmute for this.
There we are.
Okay, so please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, David Bajoran,
Being duly sworn, depose and say that I am a qualified elector of the city of Canby,
that I am a qualified elector of the city of Canby,
and that I have resided in the city of Canby, Oregon,
that I have resided in the city of Canby, Oregon,
for not less than 12 months, immediately prior to the city council appointment on October 6, 2021.
immediately prior to the city council appointment on October 6th, 2021,
And that I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States
and that I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States
and the state of Oregon,
and the state of Oregon,
and will faithfully perform the duties of the office of City Councilor of the city of Canby, Oregon,
of the office of city councilor of the city of Canby, Oregon,
to which I have been appointed.
to which I have been appointed.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. You can put your hand down now. So we've got the certificate. I guess we're going to figure out how to get all that signed. But since I swore you in, I'm more than happy to swear that you've been sworn in the interim. So, okay, I guess that does it for me.
Perfect. Judge Graff, thank you. It was a pleasure to see you.
It's always a pleasure to be seen these days.
Thank you, sir. We'll see you soon.
Okay.
Well, we can now officially say Councilor Bajoran, welcome to the council. We are very excited to have you. My understanding is I think you had an opportunity to connect with almost everybody on the council here since the nominee or the choice to appoint you and tonight. So I know that you and I still need to get together, but I appreciate you already getting in and diving headlong into the city and what we've got going on. So it's a steep learning curve here to be helpful and supportive. So please don't hesitate to reach out to any one of us with questions or anything you may need.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm excited to get started and dive in.
Well, good. Well, you get your first shot here with a public hearing here shortly. So there you go. Nothing like getting your feet wet the first night. Next on the agenda is citizen input and community announcements. This is an opportunity for audience members or citizens to address the city council on items not on the agenda. Melissa, has anyone reached out and wished to address?
We have not had anyone sign up.
Okay. Perfect. Well, those of you that are watching, if you ever do want to provide input or make an announcement, please reach out to the city recorder by 7:30, usually on the night of the city council meetings. And please reach out to Melissa Bissett, who is our city recorder, and she can be reached at Bissett, BISSETM, at cambyoregon.gov, and she'll make sure that you get teed up to address the council. Next on our agenda this evening is as I was just saying, a public hearing. We have an annexation hearing this evening. It's regarding application application to annex and apply a city zoning classification to 1495 South First Street. So it's ANN/ZC 21-02, annexation and zone change. The matter before the city council is a request to annex property into the city of Canby. Canby Municipal Code Section 16.84.050 requires the council to conduct a public hearing to evaluate the proposed annexation application and determine the appropriate zoning designation upon annexation. The matter requires a public hearing, and all interested persons in attendance shall be heard on the matter. We noticed this public hearing and providing instructions to provide comments by October 18th or to sign up to speak virtually. Those people interested in testifying, please indicate that desire. In doing so at this time, do we have people in the attendees that do wish to address? You're muted, Joe.
Okay, thank you. With Roger, is it what? Yeah, the applicant, Roger, is he wanting to speak? Or there's a proponent, I guess, who wants to speak in favor of the name Roger.
Okay, so it's Mr. Steinke that wants to address us. Okay.
And is that it?
Looks like Patrick Suzel as well.
Patrick and Blake are speaking about the.
Okay, so Patrick and Blake.
Yeah, Patrick is the engineer.
Okay, Patrick, yeah, is the engineer, and then Blake is the applicant.
Okay,
Thanks.
you got it. Sorry, if I would have kept reading, I would have seen that we have one person signed up to speak as a proponent, and that's Mr. Steinke. So you may be limited to time for your presentation. The applicant will have a total of 5 minutes to speak. The proponents will be allowed 5 minutes each, and the opponents will be allowed 5 minutes each. The applicant will then have 5 minutes for rebuttal if need be. Testimony and evidence must be directed to the applicable criteria listed in the staff report or other criteria in the comprehensive plan or land use regulations which you believe applies to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements of evidence sufficient to avoid the decision, to allow the decision makers and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue may preclude appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. All questions are to be directed through the mayor. Any evidence to be considered must be submitted to the hearing body for public access. Conflicts of interest. At this time, I would like to ask that any member of the hearing body who has a conflict of interest, please indicate the nature and extent of the conflict and whether you intend to participate or abstain from hearing the present matter. Councillor Parker.
No conflict, plan to participate.
Councillor Spoon.
No conflict, plan to participate.
Councillor Bangs.
I have no conflict and plan to participate.
Councillor Bajoran.
No conflict, plan to participate.
And finally, Council President Hensley.
No conflict, plan to participate.
I also have no conflict and plan to participate. Ex parte contact. Also, if any member of the hearing body has had any ex parte contact with anyone prior to this hearing, including a visit to the site, please declare the nature and extent of such contact at this time. Councillor Parker.
None.
Councillor Spoon.
It is on my regular dog walking route, so I walk by it frequently. But I
Thank
have
you.
contact with people.
Counselor Bangs,
None.
Counselor Bajoran,
None.
Council President Hensley.
None.
I have also had none. Does any member of the audience have any questions for any councilor or the mayor regarding ex parte contact or conflicts of interest? Not seeing any hands. So the public hearing will be conducted as follows. We will have the staff report, questions of staff by the hearing body. Then I will open the public hearing for testimony. We'll hear from the applicant, then the proponents, opponents, and then rebuttal by the applicant if need be. I will then close public testimony. There'll be questions, if any, by the hearing body, and then discussion by the hearing body. A decision shall be made by the council at the close of the hearing, or the matter will be continued to a date certain in the future for further action by this body. This will be the only notice of that date you will receive. The City Council's decision regarding the annexation application is final and will be reflected with a first and second reading of the associated annexation ordinance. Does anyone have any questions about the procedure of the hearing? Okay. I will then turn it over to staff. Hi, Brianna. How are you?
Doing very well, Mayor. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you.
Good.
The floor is yours.
Wonderful. Melissa, if you would allow me to share my screen and get this started.
Brianna, it looks like I'll need to share it from here.
Okay, that's fine.
So just one moment here.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Welcome and thank you very much, everyone, for being here tonight. Mayor Hodson and especially new Councilor Bajoran, welcome. My name is Brianna. I'm an associate planner with the City of Canby in the Development Services Department. And tonight we will be discussing the annexation of 1495 South First Street along with the zone change. Oh, Melissa, you have to, I just pushed it like I could, but thank you. So here's the subject property, 1495 South First Street. It's 1.31 acres, and currently it is in the Clackamas EFU zone. That's exclusive farm use. It was previously a small farm. You can kind of actually see that on the parcel there. This parcel is included in the Southwest Canby Development Concept Plan, and currently it is an island of county land. Next. Thank you. So again, here's the property on the left. You can see the comprehensive plan land use designation. It is designated to be medium density residential once it comes into the city. You can see it's surrounded on three sides by medium density residential with low density residential to the west. And then on the right here, you can see the zoning district has not been implemented yet because it's not annexed into the city yet, but it would be able to translate directly to the R1.5 medium density residential. Next. Here are the applicable approval criteria you can find in the development code. The R1.5 medium density residential zone, the amendments to the zoning maps, our annexation standards and procedures, our application and review and procedures, and specifically the Southwest Canby Development Concept Plan, which we'll dive into next. So here's the Southwest Canby Development Concept Plan, DCP. This was approved with the Beck Pond subdivision in 2018. That's a subdivision south. If you could click one more, I think I have a highlight Thank you. Okay, so here's the parcel that we're currently discussing. It's at the very north of the DCP area. Next. And in the DCP created in 2018, potential future development scenarios pulled access from the property to the south. The property owners appealed the DCP because they felt it limited the development potential of their property. And Roger's actually here tonight. That's wonderful. So he can speak on this as well. We've had plenty of communication, but so you can see it's labeled tax lot 1500 Steinke. And they are the property owners and the folks that appealed the original DCP. Next. And from that, the DCP as a whole was upheld by the city council, but there was an additional condition of approval that stipulated that the DCP approval, along with the Beck Pond approval, shall not determine the configuration of any future development on the Steinke property. Any future development proposal shall be judged upon its own merits if and when submitted, and shall not be bound by any shadow plat that has come before the city. So that's just a clarification that we are not binding the Steinke property to provide access to the property to the north, which is the focus of the annexation and zone change. Next. Because of that, specifically, the applicants for the annexation and zone change provided this conceptual concept plan. I want to be clear, we're not approving this tonight. We're not reviewing this tonight under the development standards or anything, but in general, it shows viability of development without access to the south. Again, it's not binding, but you can see it does create lots that generally conform to the R1.5 zoning that would be applied. And again, any future subdivision of this property will be subject to our subsequent review and ultimately subject to approval by Planning Commission. Next. So here are the comments we received. We received agency comments from Direct Link, Public Works, and the Canby engineer. They confirmed that there are utilities available on South First Street. We have development north and south and east on First Street. And the capacity was anticipated through the comprehensive plan process. As we could see, this was designated for the land use of medium density residential. We did receive some public comments concerned over the capacity of the utility system, of parking, and of a general densification of the city. So we did confirm the utility system will work, and we will confirm that again once they submit for subdivision. R1.5 zoning standards require each parcel to provide off-street parking for the vehicles there. And again, we'll review that at subdivision approval. And this density, I do completely understand, but it actually matches the density of Hope Village, which I know is master plan. So it is distributed a little bit, but those are actually the same zone, the same zoning district. So we do anticipate that this property will develop kind of in the same density as what is around it right now. Next. And so with that, the Planning Commission did hear this application and has voted to recommend approval to the City Council on application ANN/ZC21-02, subject to the identified conditions of approval in the staff report provided to you. And planning staff also support Planning Commission's recommendation to you tonight. And that is all I have. I'm happy to take questions.
Thanks, Brianna. I appreciate it. Can you go back to, or maybe Melissa can go back to the map that laid out the different plotted areas?
Slide 8.
So Brianna, so the whole area that we're talking about to the south of it is R1.5.
Yes, you can see R1.5 is that square there. R2 will be on the east. And then we do have the lower density R1, which is Ivy Ridge, which is further south.
And then, so if we go 2 parcels to the north, do we know what that is there with the cul-de-sac? Is that also R1.5?
I believe so, Melissa, if you could hop to the zoning map. I think it's one or two before. Nope, other way. Yep, slide 3, perfect. Yes, so you can see it's zoned R1.5, that cul-de-sac there, and then it's only north of the street does it become R1 again.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Melissa, as well.
Any other questions from the council of staff? Okay, we're good. Looks like. All right. Brianna, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I will officially open up the public hearing regarding the annexation and zone change. Would the applicant like to address the council?
Is the applicant there?
Yeah, he's online.
Okay.
There he is. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor and City Councilors. I'm Pat Sissel, 375 Portland Avenue, Gladstone, consultant for Blake DuPont, who is the applicant and may choose to say a few words after me this evening. I had a PowerPoint prepared, but I don't know that I can share it with you. And honestly, Brianna's PowerPoint had about 75% of what I was going to show you anyway. So I think I'll just have a few words regarding the annexation. The property is 1.31 acres, and it's an island of county land surrounded by the city. The nearest other county land to this is at the far south end of South First Street, which is approximately 1,000 feet away. And so it's, provision of services to this property would certainly be a lot cleaner if it were to come in the city, as all the properties around it are. It's located within an area of the city that has been experiencing growth. The Beck Pond subdivision has recently been developed. The Ivy Ridge subdivision is being developed. Hope Village is expanding. So this is an area that is experiencing growth, and it seems like it's a logical time to bring this property into the city and develop it to urban densities. It's expected to develop consistent with our 1.5 densities as per the comprehensive plan. We did a study in May of the residential lot inventory for Canby and determined on May 17th that the inventory was 60 lots, or roughly a 10-month supply. That's an ever-changing number, obviously, as subdivision plats are recorded and building permits are taken out. But using that number, and when subdivided, we anticipate that this property may provide an additional 6 lots to the city inventory, which would be approximately a 1-month supply. The proposed rezone won't have a significant impact on the transportation system per the analysis that was prepared by the city's traffic engineer, DKS. And utilities are available to the site. And for these reasons, we think it's an appropriate time to annex this property. Be happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Councilors, any questions for the applicant? No? Okay. Thank you. And Mr. DuPont did message and said that he was good with what's been presented so far, so he's okay. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you for being here this evening and presenting.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yep. Next up are proponents, and I think the only one that we had mentioned or had signed up was Mr. Roger Steinke. He is still wanting to address the council or regarding this topic.
There. Hi, everyone. Roger and Cheryl Steinke, 1547 South First Street, Canby, Oregon. It's been several years since we chatted with you, since 2018. So for those of you who still serve on the council, thank you very much for your time and commitment. For the new people and the new person who joined tonight, thank you for your service. So yeah, Cheryl and I are proponents. We have about 100 more neighbors now since 3 years ago. Everything's going fine. Mr. Sissel and Brian, they'll have a good plan. Just from the planning commission meeting, there was a lot of conversation about our property, which is understandable. It hasn't been discussed since 2018. Like it was said tonight, Cheryl and I had concerns. Those were addressed and resolved. We're still very grateful and appreciative of that. And so, yeah, we're proponents of it and wish everyone the best. That's it.
Great. It's good to see you both. Thank you for being here this evening, and we appreciate it. I don't think we have any opponents listed on the matter, so unless anyone's joined on that I'm not aware of, but I don't think so. I don't think the applicant needs a rebuttal unless, Mr. Sissel, you're not in favor of what your proponents had to say. Okay. I will, sorry, there you are, Mr. Sissel. Any rebuttal at all?
No rebuttal.
All right. Great. Well, then I will close the public testimony at this time. Any other questions and whatnot from the council at this point? Okay. Let me pull up my. Oh, it looks like I've got 2 questions or comments. Council President Hensley and then Councilor Bangs.
And no question or comment. I think we heard what we need to, and we already have the Planning Commission recommendation. So therefore, I move to approve the annexation and zone change, file ANNZC 21-02 pursuant to the recommendation forwarded by the Planning Commission.
And I'll second that.
All right, motion's been made by Council President Hensley and seconded by Councilor Bangs to approve the annexation and zone change file ANN-ZC 21-02 pursuant to the recommendation forwarded by the Planning Commission. Discussion. Councilor Bangs, did you have a comment?
No, I was going to make the motion or the second as it turned out.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Councilor Spoon.
Yeah, this is about as cut and dry as an annexation gets. We just talked about it a couple of years ago, and I remember talking at great length about this particular property. So it was nice I just wanted to thank the engineer and the proponents and the landowner for bringing that alternate potential look at what that could look like, because I wondered when we made that change to the comprehensive or the concept plan a couple of years ago, what a different access point would look like. And that's really helpful. I look forward to seeing what you guys come to Planning Commission with when it develops. But yeah, it's about as cut and dry as it gets. So
yeah, thank you, Councilor. I would agree with that. I mean, one of the things that I know that we've continued to work on here in the city is addressing what we call the donut, the missing middle hole in our within our urban growth boundary as properties fill and whatnot. And so I agree with you as this being fairly cut and dry from a annexation and zone change piece. So, and having going back to 2018 and the conversation around this whole development, the Steinkes have been very gracious and patient as this area has developed, and they've been very attentive to what's been going on in and around their property. So, yeah, this does seem to be very, very cut and dry. Brianna, thank you very much for a great presentation on that. So, thank you. Councilor Parker, you have a comment?
Yes, I just wanted to say that it's taken us a few years, but Brianna, thank you for this presentation. That when we have, it's been said, cut and dried, but I've been pushing for years to have planning staff come in and say, here are the criteria that you have to judge, here are the facts, and here's how we see those fitting or not fitting. And in earlier years, this type of process in terms of presentation could have taken much longer. And I wanted to thank you for your succinctness and giving us the information we needed in a way that we could quickly absorb. So splendid staff work tonight.
Okay, any other discussion points? All right, so the motion on the table by Council President Hensley and a second by Councilor Bangs. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Perfect. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, we will move ahead and approve the annexation and zone change. 5-0. Thank you all for that. Appreciate it. Brianna, again, thank you. Great job. Okay, next up, we're moving to ordinances. So the first ordinance is 1563, an ordinance proclaiming annexation into the city of Camby, Oregon. 1.31 acres of real property described as land situated southwest quarter section of 4 T.4S R.1E W.M. tax map 41E04CA and approximately 0.06 acres of adjacent South First Street right-of-way, and amending the existing county zoning from exclusive farm use, EFU, to the city medium-density residential, R-1.5, for the entire area, and setting the boundaries of the property to be included within the Canby city limits, and its first reading. We basically just heard that. We've all just had our piece on that. A motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move to pass ordinance number 1563, an ordinance proclaiming annexation into the city of Canby, Oregon, 1.31 acres of real property described as land situated southwest quarter of section 4.T4S R1E WM, tax map 41E04CA, and approximately 0.06 acres of adjacent South First Street right-of-way, and amending the existing county zoning from exclusive farm use, EFU, to city medium-density residential, R1.5, for the entire area, and setting the boundaries of the property to be included within the city limits of Canby, to do a second reading on November 3rd, 2021.
Sorry, I had my head down. Is that Councilor Bangs or Councilor Spoon that gave me the peace sign? All right. I will give it to Councilor Bangs. The tie goes to Councilor Bangs. Okay. See, I know whenever we have these annexations, Councilor Bajoran, not everyone's real anxious to jump on the first to make the motion because of everything that Council President Hensley just read. So hence why many people are excited to do the second, because they don't have to read it. But then I get to go back and reread it for the third time this evening. So motion has been made by Council President Hensley and seconded by Councilor Bang to pass ordinance number 1563, an ordinance proclaiming annexation into the city of Canby, Oregon, 1.31 acres of real property described as land situated southwest quarter of section 4 T.4S R.1E WM tax map 41E04CA. and approximately 0.06 acres of adjacent South First Street right-of-way, and amending the existing county zoning from exclusive use EFU to city medium density residential R1.5 for the entire area, and setting the boundaries of the property to be included within the Canby city limits, up for a second reading on November 3rd, 2021. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? That motion carries 5-0. All right, our next ordinance this evening is 1560, an ordinance authorizing the city of Canby to enter into a purchase agreement with Columbia Western Machinery to buy a new front-end loader, and this is up for a second reading. Mr. Archer, I'll let you fill us in.
Thank you, Mayor Hudson, and good evening, City Councilors. This is a second reading. We talked about the details of this at the last meeting, so unless any of you have questions, I will not give you a further staff report on that.
Okay. Are there any questions about purchasing a new front loader? Okay. Councilor Bangs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to adopt ordinance number 1560, authorizing the city to enter into a purchase agreement with Columbia Western Machinery to buy a new front-end loader.
Councilor? Great, thank you. Councilor Spoon? Second, thank you. Motion's been made by Councilor Bangs, seconded by Councilor Spoon, to adopt ordinance number 1560, an ordinance authorizing the city of Canby to enter into a purchase agreement with Columbia Western Machinery to buy a new front loader. All those in favor?
It's a second reading, is it not, or no?
You are correct, it is. Thank you. Pardon me on that one. So roll call vote.
Mr. Mayor, just for the record, I had asked Scott and Jerry earlier what we planned on doing with the old front end loader that we're replacing, and he gave me a good answer. We're going to save it really in reserve for use, but I don't think that was shared with everybody. So I just want everyone to know that we're not giving away the old front end loader.
Okay.
Just to add on to that, Councilor Banks, thank you. I wasn't sure if you were going to want to ask about that or not, so I was reserving that for you. We're surplusing out one of our three backhoes that we have in our service right now. So the 1986 model, you can believe that we're still running a backhoe that's 1986, which says a lot to our mechanics and our team for keeping things running. But we'll surplus out the oldest of those items, which means that gets sold through the surplus auction process, and then that money goes back into the street fund, the same fund that we're buying this new piece of equipment from. Just to clarify.
Thank you, Scott.
Great. Okay. Ms. Bissett.
Right. Bajoran.
I'm not hearing Melissa.
Bajoran.
Or is it an I? Is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah, either as yes or I or no, or abstain, one of the two or three.
You have to go first because you are first alphabetically, which I did not realize when we appointed you at first. It was one point of contention, but that's why you're on the spot. It's because you're first in the alphabet.
All right. It's an I for me.
Councilor Bangs.
Aye.
Council President Hensley.
Aye.
Councilor Parker.
Aye.
Councilor Spoon.
Aye.
Great, that passes 5-0. Next up is ordinance number 1561, an ordinance amending Canby Municipal Code, Chapter 220, to include the Library Advisory Board high school member as a voting member, with additional changes to Library Board Secretary, up for second reading.
Okay, can you hear me? So the second reading, just for anybody at home that wasn't watching last time, This is come to us from the library board and through Councilor Bangs, because he's the liaison to the library advisory board, asking for their student member to actually be a bona fide voting member. And so this was the easiest and fastest way to amend that. And at the same time, because we are amending an ordinance, and that takes some process, we went ahead and did the service to our library director of no longer making him secretary. That was the last committee, the only committee that had that in it. And so we're asking that a board member actually become the secretary for that. But otherwise, this was a second reading. And so hopefully that does the trick.
Great. Appreciate that, Mr. Lindsay. Councilor Bangs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to adopt Ordinance 1561, amending Canby Municipal Code, Chapter 220, to include the Library Advisory Board high school member as a voting member, with additional changes to the Library Board Secretary, as mentioned by Mr. Lindsay.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilor Bangs and seconded by Councilor Spoon to adopt ordinance number 1561, an ordinance amending Canby Municipal Code, Chapter 220, to include the Library Advisory Board high school member as a voting member, with additional changes to the Library Board Secretary. Second reading, so roll call vote.
Councilor Bajoran?
Aye.
Councilor Bangs?
Aye.
Council President Hensley?
Aye.
Councilor Parker?
Aye.
Councilor Spoon?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Next up is ordinance number 1562, an ordinance authorizing the city of Canby to enter into a purchase agreement with Western Systems to buy a sewer pipe crawler camera. First reading.
Does Councilor Bangs have a question, or did he forget to put his hand down?
He forgot. He's working on that.
Okay.
Mr. Archer.
Mayor and Council, this is another purchase for our Public Works Department of a piece of equipment. This item was approved in our current fiscal year budget, and we followed the normal process of procurement for this, particularly for our listening audience, but also for our brand new Councilor Bajoran. Just so you know, any contract or purchase over $50,000 by our charter has to come to City Council for approval. That applies in this case because of the amount of about $107,000. And also just quickly for awareness, the process there is, again, by our city charter, is that it has to be approved by an ordinance, which requires 2 separate readings unless it's an emergency, and then it requires a 30-day waiting period. So that is the purpose for bringing this to you, and you'll see items like this from time to time. We're on a fairly regular basis. So, Council, what we're talking about here is it's a pipe camera. It's for our storm. Both our storm and our sanitary sewer system. It's used regularly. Our current camera was manufactured in 2009, and it has outlived its lifespan. And so this is a critical piece of equipment that our Public Works operations uses for viewing the insides of pipes and looking at our system to find problems and issues as they arise. So it's a critical piece of equipment. So again, we're asking you to approve the first reading of this purchase of this new camera at the amount of $107,116.21.
Great. Thank you, Scott. Councilor Bangs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to pass Ordinance 1562, authorizing the city to enter a purchase agreement with Western Systems to buy a sewer pipe crawler camera, to a second reading on November 3rd, 2021.
I'll second.
Motion's been made by Councilor Bangs and seconded by Councilor Hensley to approve ordinance number 1562, an ordinance authorizing the city of Canby to enter into a purchase agreement with Western Systems to buy a sewer pipe crawler camera, up for a second reading on November 3rd, 2021. Any questions or discussion?
So I have just a quick question for Scott. Just roughly, how big are these things? This is a small piece of equipment, isn't it?
They're not particularly large. I think they're typically attached to a system of wires. I can't tell you the exact details. And Mr. Nelzine, I let him have the evening off from the council meeting. Otherwise, he'd probably give you some great details. I'd be happy to report back when we do our second reading. But I would say the cost is in the technical capabilities that this has, and it has to remote into a some kind of a screen, and so it's a fairly high tech piece of equipment. I don't think it's so much the size of it, but yeah, it has to be small to be able to. It's like a scope with a camera on it, but a more high tech version of kind of just a simple scope. Would you like a little bit more of an extensive report, or even possibly a photo of what these look like?
Yeah, it'd be really interesting just to take a look at one before it got used.
Yes, we can bring an example of that at the second reading and kind of help address that a little bit more. Yeah,
if that's a complication, I'm going to support this anyway. I don't need to see it. It's simple curiosity. I didn't even know these things existed.
Hey, Scott, I told you Barry needed to be here tonight.
He was off the hook, but now he's back on the hook.
Yeah, so several years ago, actually, when the one that has used its useful life that we're replacing was first purchased, think of it as a truly as like a almost remote control little crawler that goes up the pipes in and around the city. It was used a lot, I believe, with First Avenue when opening up the streets, because there was a number of pipes and things that led to nowhere. And so they were using that device to kind of scope those pipes to find out where did they go, where did they not go. They also use it when going through and determining if there's been invasive roots into the pipe system, so they know about approximately where that is and where they can get into, instead of to get to the blockage, instead of digging up feet or tens of yards of street to get to pipes to find a leak or to find the blockage. So they drop this little rover into some of those pipes to do that. We used to do like a public works day. Councillor Hensley and Councillor Parker, you might remember those. But basically, we blocked off the street in front of the old city hall, and Public Works brought out all their toys. And one of those was this device, and it is got a, if I remember correctly, it had its own, it has its own truck with all of the screens and computers that they use to control it, and all the viewing equipment. So your curiosity, Councillor Bangs, is warranted. It is kind of cool. It makes looking at pipes a little bit more interesting for our Public Works team, for sure.
And we'll see if we can't find a simple photo or two of that to throw up on the screen at the next at the second reading of this.
All right.
That was a good description, Mayor. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. So all those in favor? I see 5 hands. Anyone opposed? That carries 5-0. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Council. Next up on the agenda is the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda that includes the minutes of the September 1st, 2021 regular city council meeting.
Thank you. Can I get a second? Thank you, Councilor Spoon. Motion has been made by Council President Hensley and seconded by Councilor Spoon to approve the consent agenda which includes the approval of the minutes of the September 1st, 2021 regular city council meeting. Any other comments or discussion on this matter? Okay, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? That carries 5-0. Next on our agenda this evening is a discussion regarding the open air Camby program. And tonight we have our Economic Development Director, Jamie Stickle. Good evening, Jamie.
Hi, good evening, Council. Jamie Stickle, Economic Development Director. After some discussion with Scott Archer, the City Administrator, about the open air program, we thought it would be best to bring it back to you as a discussion topic tonight. To kind of talk about the program. It does sunset, or it is set to sunset December 31st of 2021, which, while I'd like to pretend that the end of the year feels far away, it is coming very quickly. So as background, in October of 2020, you approved Resolution 1342, which was in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And in the packet tonight, you will have the document that is live that we provide to businesses. And it's very clear from that document that it was in hopes that we would only see maybe one winter with COVID-19 and masking and needing to sit outdoors. But as the owner of Oregon City Brewing Company says, and I think most of us can attest to, that doesn't quite feel like outdoor seating is going to be going away, whether that's because we need to social distance or because now Oregonians know that we can sit outside year round and enjoy our favorite food and beverage establishments. The program allowed local businesses, not just restaurants, but local businesses, including retail and restaurants, to expand seating into the private parking lots. It also suspended certain codes, specifically around parking requirements. Many of our private parking lots have the reason that they have the number of parking stalls that they have for them is because it fits within the code. It is something that our planning department works on. And so it was to suspend some of that so that it would allow for expanded seating for our businesses, who many of which at that time were closed altogether, except for outdoor seating. Additionally, several requirements were outlined, which included language around getting permission from landlords, keeping the expansion area from impeding ADA parking or travel, or fire lanes, and then adhering to guidelines from OLCC and the state of Oregon around COVID-19 guidelines. So additionally, we have provided some information when we have a request from a business to use this program. We use our temporary vendor permit as far as applying it to a tent that would be used to cover the area. This helps to make sure that our planning department is aware that a tent is going up and that it fits with certain codes as far as setbacks go or sight lines. A lot of that is around safety. But the fee was waived by the former finance director so that we were able to adhere to what the intent of the program was, which was to be responsive without causing yet another cost for our small businesses. Additionally, in the information that we provide, we also give some information and appropriate contacts for Canby Fire and the Clackamas County Building Codes Division. The Canby Fire is so that they can ensure that the tents are fire rated and safe. And then Clackamas County does have some language. They don't require a building permit should the tent be used for less than 180 days. If it's going to be used more than 180 days, a building permit and site plan is required. The processing time that goes with that is about 2 to 6 weeks, and a business cannot have a tent in place while they are processing. So Jamie's restaurant can't put up a tent for 180 days, and while they submit the building permits, it has to be done before the tent were to ever go up. So we were able to provide all of that information to our local businesses. We had several different businesses, Wayward Downtown, FOB Tap Room, Los Dos Agave, that had participated in this program. They all benefited by having private parking lots. And I do want to just also note that while this is not covered in this program, we were also able to be responsive and do some outreach to some of our downtown businesses. Backstop was a good example that they needed some outdoor seating above and beyond what they already had when a shutdown happened in April. And we were able to apply the right-of-way encroachment application to that request. And so we've been able to, in addition to this program, use some of the forms and some of the permits that we already have in place to be responsive during this time. But like I said, it does not look like the need to social distance or people stopping outdoor dining or business is going to happen anytime soon. And so we wanted to come back before you, kind of take a pulse of where the mayor and council, how you feel about the program, if it's something that you would like to see continued, if it's something that you'd like to see continued with amendments, with some changes. And then obviously get it back before you at another city council meeting. And so basically tonight I had included two options, but one would be to direct staff to bring a staff report and resolution back for potential adoption to continue the open air Canby program after December 31st, 2021, or direct staff to continue the open air Canby program with the sunset date of December 31st, 2021. That is all that I have, but I am open to any questions or comments.
Jamie, thank you for bringing this back. I appreciate it. I think this has been an important piece that we've done in supporting our businesses through the COVID piece. What feedback have you had? So a couple of questions. One, what feedback have you had from the businesses that are doing the outside dining and using this program? In terms of its success, is it missing? Are there pieces missing that we need to amend that's been feedback from the businesses that use it, or that you yourself would say, hey, we need to enhance it in this fashion?
That's a great question. I think that as far as the feedback that we received, obviously the businesses that chose to participate in this program, that helped them to stay afloat during the winter time that was last year. Undoubtedly, it helped some of those businesses. Wayward Sandwiches is a great example. They were a new business right before the pandemic started. I don't even think that they had 6 months under their belt. And so to be able to then continue into winter of last year and have outside seating, I think has been a tremendous help. And I think that the businesses that were able to take part in it really felt like that the decisions that were made to create this program and to adopt it really helped to make sure that they didn't have to close. Camby is very unique in the sense that as far as COVID goes, many of our businesses have been able to stay afloat. We've had businesses open in the last, year and a half. Lots of other cities are not saying the same. I think that the language was written, it very, very closely copied what Beaverton had put into place. And I think that when it was written, it was the thought that, the shutdown was only going to be for a little while, or a shutdown for businesses might only happen once. And so I think that as far as making sure that we were, if this is to move forward and to continue past the December 31st date, we would maybe want to clean some of that language up. Is this something that is temporary until COVID is over? Or, it references even phase 1 guidelines or things like that. So maybe cleaning some of that language up. Is it a temporary program? Is it something that we want to be a more permanent program? Is it something, if that's the case, I'm sure that our planning department would have some additional kind of thoughts and some ideas on what it would take to be able to implement something. a little bit more permanent. But I think that it's a program that has been able to keep our businesses alive during this time. And really, I haven't heard much other than I've heard really good things from the residents, and I'm sure that there are businesses who don't have parking lots right in front of them that would be thrilled to have had a parking lot nearby so that they could have done additional outdoor seating. So,
thank you. Council President Hensley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am wholeheartedly behind anything that's going to support our businesses. Clearly, our state legislature isn't going to support them. So anything we can do to make them survive these ridiculous edicts, I am fully behind. So Jamie, I would love to see you bring back some language and let us continue this program so we can support our hometown businesses that work so hard for our community.
Thank you. Councilor Spoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a quick question and then I have a number of comments. Where are we at in terms of the current standard of what restaurants are able to do capacity-wise?
You mean?
Yeah. There isn't a social distancing in place anymore. So if that answers that.
It does. Thank you. So here are my thoughts. I agree that I'm really interested in pursuing how this can expand. I think it's no longer a temporary program. It's no longer needed as an emergency action because they don't have capacity restrictions anymore. So it's not like we're helping them stay afloat because they can't have full capacity as they anticipate in their restaurants. But I love the idea of having outdoor seating for restaurants. And this is what I think would be important to me. Is I would be okay even expanding some amount of outdoor seating into public parking, much like you see in Oregon City, if you've been in their downtown, specifically at Nebbiolo. And then there's another one that I cannot think off the top of my head, but I have pictures of that I would love to send to Jamie, and if she wants to send them to council after the fact. But what they are is they're permanent structures. So these businesses have built wood structures with like corrugated plastic roofs. And there's also landscaping. So there's like troughs with plants in them or planters with plants, because basically we're at the point. So I want some design standards because I don't want temporary tents in our downtown or in our other businesses on any sort of permanent or even semi-permanent length of time. I think it changes the feel of our downtown, and it risks making some of our parking areas look like encampments or, just temporary event spaces, which it's not. It should feel permanent if we're going to move forward with it. So I would like to see no temporary tents if someone wants to use, if they want to get what amounts to basically a variance on our parking code, or they want to use public space for private enterprise. I think they should be willing to invest in what that looks like so that it maintains the quality of the look of our downtown. I'd like to see no event or temporary fencing, like no banner strung across fencing. There should be some design standard that honors the feel and the sense of place we're going for in our downtown. And I'd like to see some landscaping standards. If this was once again an emergency action because they could not have a full restaurant, I would be, I guess, more open, or if people just want to make it temporary for one more winter because of COVID, I would be more open to less design standards. But if we're functionally looking at making this permanent, I mean, if you look at the outdoor dining spaces in downtown Oregon City, they're a really exceptional standard to add to the feel of downtown. And if we're going to allow people to use, public space for private enterprise or to get what amounts to a variance on code, I think that they should be willing to invest in that. So those are my thoughts, but I'm a fan of the program and I'd like to see it continue just with some increased expectations and requirements.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Bangs.
I see this as two different questions, and I support both. I do believe that we're going to be continued to shut down for COVID for at least a few more months. OHSU now says that perhaps around Christmas time, we will achieve herd immunity. Clearly, we need to have this program in place through this pandemic. So I would definitely direct staff or support directing staff or to give a thumbs up. I'm not sure what Jamie needs here. If it's a motion, I'd be happy to make one. But to roll this thing over for through the pandemic. And frankly, I think it's really cool to sit outside, and I think it makes our town a lot better. I worry about the parking for non-restaurant and bar businesses. I'd like to have an idea of how they feel about it. In terms of like a permanent outdoor seating solution, I would like to have some kind of mechanism to protect people sitting at tables from cars, along with that decorative fencing. I think staff is capable of coming up with these kinds of ideas, but I think that there's two questions afoot here. And one of them is the temporary one, and the other one is a permanent one. And I'm in favor of both, but I don't think they're the same question. I think they require different levels of work by our staff. I would also further support continuing the waiver of the fee through the pandemic, as long as our restaurants I think the restaurants are doing okay now, but I don't know that for sure. But I would support waiving that fee. I have one question for Jamie. If you set up a tent in the county for 170 days and then take it down for a few weeks, and then can you set up a different tent in the same place for another 170 days and dodge the whole building permit? That's all I have to say.
And that's a great question. And this program was being spearheaded by a different staff person, but I believe that it can't just come down for a couple of days or a weekend. That I believe that there is also still a set amount of time in order to fit with what their guidelines. 3 weeks. Is that what Councilor Park was saying?
Well, yeah, the county is a different question than the city as well. We have, about temporary structures, we extended them 3 more months past the 6 month at one point to make it 9 months out of the year. Did that for, I think, one of our outdoor areas around that chapel that is the concert hall. So that's one level in the city. This was an attempt, if some of you recall, to just do as much as we could, which meant if there was a private lot and somebody wanted to go ahead and expand into it. So there is a lot of room to add to maybe public spaces, like Councilor Spoon was saying, but that it's just not in this. This was kind of a trying to do as quick and as fast as possible to help with folks that could just expand it into their own private areas. So there really is, and I know you guys are going to have food carts coming up too, and I know those things can probably cross over. But I as your risk manager, can also hear what Councilor Bangs is saying about if you are going to really encourage outdoor seating and people being around, you do have to be very careful of traffic patterns and things like that too. So if you are looking to do this over the long run, it would behoove us all to make sure that we are looking at it through a risk lens as well. So that's my 2 bets. And I just used the opportunity to say, I'm not sure what the county says, but usually it's within a calendar year or within a year of start. So you have to kind of make sure and take it down and not exceed that within that year.
Council President Hensley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to agree with Councilor Spoon in that I think a more refined and professional, polished look is better than the temporary tents. I'm not going to name names, but I know there's at least one restaurant in the downtown area that has kind of converted their tent space when they could go back inside, kind of was used for storage. So I'm thinking that a nice, refined, polished look is better. So I agree with Sarah on that. I would like to see that happen.
Great, thank you. Jamie, so a couple of things. I don't disagree with Councilor Spoon's comments about we and Councilor Bangs and Council President Hensley. I do think we have an opportunity. I think the concept, Councilor Spoon, right, is kind of that parklet piece that we're talking about here in terms of taking over parking. I would, as I look at it, two things. One, I would say it would be worth extending this another year in its current form, which would allow us to determine and maybe work on additional, pieces or changes or code aspects that's been brought up this evening. So that's one suggestion or one piece. The other piece is, I've heard it said a couple of times here from the group that we're not sure the take on this from the business community. I would like to see the city partner with Mr. Lang at the chamber to have some conversation with our downtown businesses on this kind of parklet concept. What is that going to mean for our non-restaurant and bar businesses downtown in terms of taking away, parking, as we have grown our downtown tremendously. We have the Camby Library Brewing coming on board, which is going to, I have no doubt, be busy and busier with the rooftop outside seating and whatnot. And so it's a balancing act, right? We have had conversation as a group about, is parking a problem, right? So are we trying, sometimes we've had that conversation. Are we trying to find a problem to, put a solution to? And so I don't want us to necessarily create a parking problem unnecessarily, but it's definitely worth conversation and balance. So those are my two pieces: is extend, in my opinion, extend it. That gives us time to work on a bigger, better mousetrap in regards to this. And then secondly, working with the Chamber of Commerce on what that impact would look like, good, bad, or indifferent. Councillor Spoon, additional comments?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of things that came up after I spoke. In terms of the food cart pods, I think this is a good opportunity for synergy in terms of design standards. So I'm sure that staff has already thought about it, but really looking at not expecting more out of a food cart pod than we expect out of an existing brick and mortar, and making sure that there's a fair amount of expectation for what those seating areas look like. So I think that would be nice to have some synergy there. Agree with reaching out to the business community beyond just the restaurants. I would love to know what the neighboring businesses to those restaurants are feeling about this, and if there's a pinch there. I mean, and in April, when Backstop had that additional space, which I thought was great, didn't sense an additional pinch on parking. We actually just recently watched a YouTube video of downtown Canby in 2015, and it's really incredible how different our downtown is in 6 years. But still, parking is, I think, sometimes we have a parking expectation problem and not a parking problem. So be interested to get some more information on that. In terms of how long we could extend it, I would actually rather see us extend it more in its current status until like June, so that they can get through the winter without having to make huge investments. But I think come June, we start to get a lot more tourists and visitors to our town. And it would be nice if our town, if we had those higher expectations and design standards in place, especially as we're getting all these new businesses. By next June, we could be looking at, many, many more visitors to Canby than we have in past years. We'll hopefully, fingers crossed, have our Independence Day event back in the street. And it would just be nice if those design standards were in place for that visitor tourism season. The other business I was trying to think of downtown, I remembered, is Archbridge Tap House. And I sent all those pictures. I texted them all to Jamie, so maybe tomorrow she can send them out if you guys haven't been in downtown Oregon City. And I also agree about getting a balance in the amount of space. When I say I think that businesses should be able to expand into public parking, I don't know how we factor that. I'm sure staff has much better ideas than I do, if it's a percentage of existing square footage or if it's factored on how much parking is around them. But I think finding a balance. I'm not looking to have a business take all of the parking in front of their business for something like this, unless they only have one or two spots in front of them. You know what I mean? So finding that balance, I think, is important. And part of that is probably the outreach to the neighboring businesses that are not restaurants and seeing how the lack of, or the adjustment in parking is affecting them. But I sure appreciate all of staff's work. I think this program's been awesome. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Bangs.
Thank you. So it expires in December. Is that what you said, Jamie?
Yes, December 31st.
If we go with a complete rollover for 6 months, that would extend us to June. and I'm totally willing to extend it beyond that, but I'm really optimistic, and I have been twice before, but I'm optimisticer now that this COVID thing is going to go away and that we're going to have some normalcy coming around in springtime. And so, and the other thing is I would like you to look into the more permanent solution, taking all of this other stuff into consideration. And I think you guys know what to do. I don't think you need us to direct you how to do that. But, for the meantime, I would support bringing a resolution to us for a 6-month extension of that emergency decree.
I'd like to give it to Councillor Bangs for creating a new word, optimisticer.
So if it does go away, we're going to talk about optimisticist as well.
If we go with that 6-month rollover, does anyone object to having some language in there that would allow places like Backstop to encroach on the right of way again? If they don't have private parking, can we maybe add some language in so that there's equity for our businesses? That's the only, I would roll everything else over for 6 months, but I would love to see places like Backstop or now we have Siren Song and other places downtown that don't necessarily have private parking, allowing them some sort of opportunity.
I would support that.
Yeah, it seems fair.
Because one of the reasons this was a little less hard to get to last time was because of liability, and if it was going to be in a private area, they were kind of on the hook for themselves. If we are going to use private or public, then they're going to have to have some sort of standards, like Councillor Bangs brought up about safety. So you'd notice in Portland and various places where when they do use the public right of way, they do pretty much put up a wooden fence. So I guess if I'm getting like a general consensus of what to come back with here in the short order, I hope you're not surprised that if it does go into the public sphere, that then there's going to be some safety measures put in place. So it won't look totally equal, and that if you're using public space, there's going to have to be safety involved.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Councillor Spoon?
Yeah, I guess my only thought on that, I agree. Certainly we need to have safety, is that even if it's, my only concern about safety is not liability, it's also safety. So like even in private parking lots, if you roll in by say FOB, you're driving pretty close to that. So I think that there's no harm in having some safety standard for all of them, because my concern for safety is not just liability, it's also actually public safety. So
Jamie, do you have what you need?
I do.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate you bringing this back to us.
Thank you all. I appreciate it. Have a good evening.
Okay. Next on the agenda is mayor's business. I don't have a lot necessarily. On the Clackamas County Coordinating Committee side of life, the committee did have a retreat, their annual retreat here a couple weeks ago. And a lot of the conversation was, surprise, surprise, transportation and housing, and some land use, which is what our bylaws direct us to do. But there was also a lot of conversation about the Metro housing bill that was passed and the dispersion of those funds and how that's being worked out right now. And so there's going to be a lot more conversation at the Clackamas County Coordinating Committee regarding that topic coming up. The Region 1 Area Commission on Transportation, so the R1 Act, meets in a couple weeks, so I'll report back on that, and that's going to be heavy on a tolling conversation. On the Park Advisory Board Committee front, they had a meeting last night. So there was a lot of conversation about the discussion of some development and grading in preparation of a park in the new Riverside 3 Ivy Ridge development. And so more to come on what that is going to entail. So it's the developer is working with the city or has worked with the city on, making sure that the land that may be dedicated or used for a park, not just be just a plain dirt weed field, but actually be graded, piped, have all the necessary elements so that when time comes for it to develop, those elements are already there and it's not, it's already in the ground at now costs versus later costs. So that was a conversation there. Some of the monthly park updates. They reviewed the park pavilion at Locust Street Park, and that's moving along. The pickleball court is progressing at Maple Street Park. So if you've not been over there, definitely go by, take a look. They're going to be doing some, I believe some asphalt's going to be laid down for the court. And then that's got to be allowed to cure through the winter here, and then should be finished up in the spring for spring and summer pickleball matches. We had an update regarding Waite Park and our trees. So FEMA came in and looked at some of our trees that were damaged during the winter storm in February. And it looks like, or it sounds like FEMA's going to get coming in with about $33,000 to help with the cost of tree removal there in Waite Park. Bids are coming in the area of around $85,000 for tree removal. So we've a little bit of a gap there that Public Works is working both with the bids that have, those that have submitted bids, as well as FEMA to see if there's anything more along those lines. Also, we do have from FEMA also, and Scott, correct me if I captured this wrong, $219,000 for storm debris cleanup. So those are funds coming back to the city that we spent on doing cleanup and whatnot around the storm in February. Additional pieces. So we have a date for Light the Night. It is going to be the first Friday in December. Lights and displays have arrived and they're getting ready to start putting those up and get ready for the Light the Night event. And then that was kind of it on that front in terms of discussion pieces on their agenda. And then they did have a steering committee update and discussion, which I believe Mr. Archer is going to share with us here in his reports. Finally, my annual ask of leaves being raked into the streets. Leaves are changing colors. It's very beautiful. And as they change, they fall into yards and then proceeded to get raked up. The idea being that you pick up the leaves, put them in a yard debris bag, and our waste management company will remove those. I know we get a number of people in town that will rake them into the street in hopes that the city street sweeper, when they would come around, will pick up those leaves for them. The concern is that you then you cover the sewer grates and the sewer drainage curbing lines get blocked, which then create flooding. And it is an increased cost to the city to run our street sweeper, followed by a dump truck to empty our street sweeper more often than it should be. So please rake your leaves into yard debris bags or your lovely yard debris container and make sure that that's how they're disposed. I would really not like, it would not be a lot of fun to come back next year and talk about, I don't know, fines or something along those lines. If you need help, there are many organizations that can help rake leaves for those that need it. Also, ask about cars and trucks in driveways, maybe hanging over into the sidewalk. Just as an ask from one of our city councilors and people in our community, please, if your car or truck is too long and is going into the sidewalk walking path, maybe park it in the street or pull it closer into your house, please. We're seeing a lot of people having to dodge long trucks and long cars, along walks and things of that nature. So if you would please be conscientious of that, I would appreciate it. That is all that I have right now for this evening. We'll go into councilor comments and liaison reports, and I will start with Councilor Parker.
Nothing this week. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Bangs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of things. The Library Advisory Board met yesterday, and they're still preparing for their presentation to a work session for the City Council. Also, they're going to look at the code revision. I think it's 220.060. It's the section that deals with the Library Board's responsibility. They're all looking at that. The school district met. They're still meeting on Zoom. And I don't really have much to report about their last meeting. They're also looking at codes and such. Monday this week was the COVID deadline imposed by the state requiring all school personnel to be vaccinated. And this has been a big question really around the state and here in Canby. Our school district reported this week that nearly all of our teachers and staff have been fully vaccinated at, I think it was 96 and 95% respectively. And that of the remainder, all of them were granted religious or health exceptions, with the exception of one staff person, not a teacher. And we don't know who that was. But so the school district lost one employee with the state's vaccine requirement. The other interesting thing, and both of these were reported in the local media, but they've both come out too recently by the school district. They're selling that old 1920s something Karras grade school building that's on Highway 213 to anybody really, I think, for $1 if you can move it. So otherwise they'll have to dismantle it, but it would be it's a cool building. If anyone is interested out there in a old grade school building that's probably marginally safe for $1. Also, I had two questions here for a couple of committees. Mr. Mayor, was the Parks and Rec Committee able to discuss the replacement of the bathroom at the community park?
We haven't added for a future agenda item, so I shared that with the chair, and he will be adding it to a future agenda.
And how often does that committee meet?
Once a month.
Okay, I'm motivated to get that replaced because I think it's a public health crisis at the Canby Community Park, but I'm content to wait a month. Also, we had a letter that came out for Bob Camera, and I have a question for Councillor Hensley regarding the Traffic Safety Committee. They had recommended, or he had recommended, that we close parking on one side of 3rd and 2nd Avenue.
I'll be addressing that in my councillor comments.
Excellent, thank you. I was just wondering, how does that happen? What's the procedure? So that was it for me for this week. Thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you. Council President Hensley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I get to the traffic safety liaison report, I just wanted to report I attended today the groundbreaking ceremony for the Canby Fire District North Side Station. That's an excellent opportunity for our city. I'm so happy that we were able to partner with them. They're going to have a 3,600 square foot station with 2 bays. They're going to bring one medic and one engine over on our side of town. I say our side because I'm on the north side. They'll also have the other half of the building will be apartments, sleeping quarters, kitchen, day room situation. So that'll be nice. And it'll be right near our public works facility. So that's didn't even occur to me until the event today that's kind of an added benefit for the city, that there'll be folks there 24/7 kind of having eyes on all of our city assets. So that was a nice benefit that I didn't even realize until today. So that was nice. So I wanted to thank the Canby Fire District Board and Directors and Chief Davis and crew for their vision and commitment to the community. And also to the Canby voters who voted for the bond that made this vision become reality. So thank you for all of that. Thank you for your confidence in our leadership. A couple of things that I would normally talk about in October, I would have done at the last meeting, but in light of the fact that I knew it was going to be a marathon meeting with all those interviews, I've forgotten those thoughts until this meeting. But I want to make sure that I make a mention of a couple of things. October is historically recognized as Breast Cancer Awareness Month, but there's a couple of things that get kind of forgotten about in light of that. And there's some debate on whether October or May is Mental Health Awareness Month, but Mental Illness Awareness Week was October 3rd through 9th. And I just wanted to remind folks that here in Camby, we do have the CambyCenter.org. You can go there and click on Get Help and hit Programs. And the Camby Suicide Prevention Task Force, which is actually going to be rebranded soon as Camby Hope. There's a lot of resources there that you can access. So I want to encourage folks who might be in need of those resources to go to CambyCenter.org. And also, it's Domestic Violence Awareness Month. National Coalition Against Domestic Violence is a good resource. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 10 men experience sexual violence or physical violence and or stalking by an intimate partner in their lifetime. And after experiencing intimate partner violence, 52% of female victims and 17% of male victims have shown PTSD symptoms. Intimate partner victimization is also correlated to higher rate of depression and suicidal thoughts and behaviors. I want to bring this out because it's an important thing to know about and to know that there are resources locally and nationally. You can go to any hashtag We Are Resilient. You can go to the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, but also here in Clackamas County, we have an excellent resource at A Safe Place in Oregon City. And you can access them via the internet at A Safe Place FJC, FamilyJusticeCenter.org. So I just wanted to let everybody know you're not alone. This happens more frequently than I would like to know that is happening. So if you need help, reach out. And also you can look at my counselor Facebook page. I've been posting things and will continue to provide those resources to folks. I also met with now Counselor Bajoran. Before he was counselor, I did, as promised, meet with him, and we had a lovely meeting. And I wanted to extend to you, David, if you have any other questions or all this crazy stuff that you've endured tonight, if you want to have any other conversation about things, just feel free to reach out, and I'm here to help you with anything there. The Traffic Safety Commission did present a letter at the Canby City Traffic Safety Commission meeting on October 13th. Discussion continued as a topic of previous meetings regarding the traffic flow related and parking problems on both South 2nd and 3rd Streets. The discussion was the 3rd Street roadway measures 31 feet with 2 5-foot sidewalks. And the roadway on 2nd Street is 30 feet. Presently, vehicles are allowed to park on both sides of the street. With vehicle parking taking approximately 8 feet on each side, you end up with 14 to 15 feet of roadway for 2 lanes of roadway for vehicles going and driving both ways. This is not enough room. Normal standards require 20 feet of driving space. Vehicles approaching each other are forced into open parking spaces to allow the other vehicles to pass. This is particularly concerning for school buses, larger trucks, such as from Public Works and the fire department. The aerial fire ladder apparatus, which would be needed for the new 3-story project, width is 16 feet. It's too wide for street where vehicles are parked on both sides. The city's fire code states aerial fire apparatus access roads shall have a minimum of unobstructed width of 26 feet, exclusive of shoulders in the immediate vicinity of the building or portion thereof. An additional concern was highlighted by a recent accident as a vehicle was turning right onto 3rd Street from South Grant intersection. As the car turns, because a vehicle is parked on both sides of the street, turning car actually turns into a 1-lane roadway, was confronted by a car already traveling on the same lane toward that vehicle. If there were only parking on one side of the street, it would allow enough room for the fire apparatus to move down the street and provide space for 2 open lanes of traffic. Thus, there was a motion presented. The Traffic Safety Commission encourages, okay, now my computer's going to screw up. Come on. I was doing so good. There we go. Traffic Safety Commission encourages community testimony at our December meeting on an agenda item to consider recommending to the city restricting vehicle parking to just one side of the street on both 2nd and 3rd streets. The motion was voted upon and approved. What this means is that the Traffic Safety Committee meeting on Wednesday, I'm getting the calendar out, December 8th at 8:30 a.m. They're going to encourage folks who want to present testimony on and give their ideas and thoughts on this motion to bring their ideas to that meeting. And of course, 8:30 on a Wednesday morning may not be available for all folks in the town. So we would encourage you to send an email or phone call to give your thoughts on this. But they're going to be getting all this information from folks because they are going to be making a recommendation to us as a council in the coming months, because this has been a problem in that neighborhood already, given Enterprise Rent-A-Car and their situation with all the traffic that's trying to get around their parking situation. And now we have a new development going in. So there's been some concern from neighbors that has been brought to the Traffic Safety Committee. And so therefore they're going to propose this, but they want some citizen input. So December 8th is the meeting that they'll be taking that input. Does that answer your question, Councilor Bangs, or did you have more question?
No, that was it. I was just wondering what the process was for doing that. I have some input on that. I can just share that with you later before we do that. But thank you very much.
Sure. And Melissa, if there's anything that we need to get to Bob as far as process, please let me know. He did ask me if there was anything else we needed to do other than just simply announcing that we want input. So if there's something that I need to let Bob know, please let me know. Thank you, Melissa. And I believe, Mr. Mayor, that concludes my report tonight.
Great. Thank you, Council President Hensley. Councilor Spoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Hensley, thank you for bringing up those important issues, domestic violence and mental health awareness. I sure appreciate that. Welcome to the team, Councilor Bajoran. I'm so happy to have you here. I just wanted to make sure you got a warm welcome from all of us. We're all looking forward to working with you, I'm sure. Next, the CAT circulator, as I said last time, is up and running. So you will see now little bus stop signs around town that haven't been there before with the CAT logo, as the CAT bus now goes in a circulating route around the city. It started on October 4th, and then there was, and the unfortunate timing of shortly after it started on October 12th, there was a disturbance in the service because there was a train cutting our town off in half again for 3 to 4 hours in the morning. So they were able to post on their social media site that their route was going to be delayed, but they still were planning to get to all of the stops. So please engage with our social media if you intend to ride it in case there are future delays. I found them to be really responsive. There were multiple updates during that few hour period. So if you are a rider of CAT, it's a good way to stay connected. If the bus isn't coming and you aren't sure why, it could be something as simple as a train in the middle of town. On October 29th at 3 p.m., you should have all received an invitation today, thanks to the hard work of Jamie Stickle. My little pet project for the summer, the Oregon Film Trail plaque dedication is going to happen then. It's going to be on the corner of kind of Territorial Road and Redwood, which is right at Eco Park. And there's going to be light refreshments. It's just going to be the dedication of a plaque that we did in conjunction with the Oregon Film Trail. And I'm so grateful Jamie helped so much with this and did so much work on it. But it will identify that area as a filming location from 2014 for the TV show Grimm, as the press release said. And it was Eco Park was kind of used as a European dark forest. So they filmed in there, and economic development worked with them to make sure that they had everything they needed for filming. But what's exciting from a tourism perspective is that the Oregon Film Trail, which is a joint effort with other organizations in the state, is kind of marking, with the help of cities, filming locations. And then if you go to their website, which is Oregon Film Trail, historicoregonfilmtrail.com, you can see that they have a map of all the different plaque locations. And if you're a fan of something, you can kind of go and see where filming sites were and then go visit them. There are a number of filming sites in the city of Canby. This is one of the only ones I could document that happened on public land. And of course, most private landowners wouldn't want a plaque on their property with a map saying anyone should come visit this site. So being able to identify a public location for filming was really neat. And we get to now be a part of the Oregon Film Trail. So that dedication, again, is October 29th at 3 p.m. there at Eco Park on the corner of Territorial and Redwood. And I would love for anyone who's interested to come and see it. It's a pretty cool looking marker, and it'll be fun because it should be easily visible and accessible from the logging road trail. So people will begin discovering it as they're just walking along the logging road trail. And it's a fun point of interest and could potentially help with some tourism down the road, as well as maybe help us create some relationships for future filming in the city of Canby. I want to welcome to Canby King's Farm to Table, which opened since our last meeting. I know Councillor Hensley was also at the ribbon cutting. If you have not had their lasagna or brisket, you are missing out on something pretty incredible. Everything I've had there is amazing. It's kind of a unique business in Holly Mall where you kind of go in and purchase almost like they're your private chef, and you can go in and purchase items to take home and consume. So they don't have any dining seating indoors, but their food is amazing. They also have some local gifts and local food products. So pretty cool business to have here, a new addition to our downtown, which I always love, and filling up some of those vacant storefronts. So welcome to town. Brian, I have a question about the Ivy Ridge Park. And maybe my memory is missing me, but I thought when we were talking about that development concept plan and that zoning and everything, we talked about not having a developer made park there. So I was wondering if we can go back, and I don't know if there's a way to revisit that, but one of the conversation pieces we've had over the last several years is that when developers create parks on our behalf, it takes the community input away. We're kind of given a piece of land and then we have to maintain it, but it's not a parcel of land of our choice. And I have some general concerns about little pocket parks in communities like that in terms of equity and how they feel like private parks for that neighborhood because there's no parking. And I just generally am not a fan. So I thought we had a long, kind of robust conversation about not having one of those in that neighborhood. And I'm wondering if you can speak to that. And then I have one more thing on councilor comments if you have something to say about that first.
I do have something to say about that, and it's in my notes to have a conversation with our city administrator in our weekly conversation to get some more detail about that and to address that issue.
Great. I would love to hear more about that later because that's been an ongoing conversation for us at council. So I was surprised to hear they were putting one there. My final note for councilor comments is when we were doing the appointment at the last meeting, it really reminded me how great it is to see all of the applicants and be able to talk to all of the people that are interested in engaging in the city. I went back and looked at the city charter, and it indicates that council actually appoints for committees. And I was wondering if we can have a conversation as a council at some point about opening that committee appointment process up instead of having, in the past, sometimes what happens is even if multiple people apply for the position, we only get the recommendation of the recommendee and their application, and we don't really get to see who else applied, or we don't get an opportunity to talk to the other applicants, which I think might potentially make it difficult for council to appoint the best or best fit for that role, as the charter kind of indicates is our role. So I just wanted to throw out there, I'd love to have a conversation about us opening the committee appointment process up. Maybe it could look like any counselor can attend committee interviews, and then when there's a recommendation made, we can see all of the applications that were submitted for that, not just the recommended applicant. So just a conversation piece that I would love to have at some point in the future.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Councilor Spoon. Last but not least, Councilor Bajoran. You've just been appointed, so I'm sure you've had lots of opportunity to get up to speed on your various committees. At least you went last tonight, so you get a feel of kind of what we're looking for in terms of reports to that. So definitely something you and I can discuss when we get together for coffee.
Absolutely. I look forward to it.
Excellent. Well, great. Well, thank you all for your reports. I appreciate it. Next up is City Administrator Business and Staff Reports. Mr. Archer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a few items. The first item is actually noted on the agenda, but then I had 2 or 3 other quick notes as well after that. So the first is an update on the Parks and Recreation Master Plan process. And Mayor, you touched on this a little bit earlier, but I wanted to just give council kind of a general update as to where we're at, because it's such a significant process with lots of community input taking place and having taken place already. So as I think most of you are aware, we entered into a contract with a company called Green Play, which is a national firm that basically does comprehensive parks and recreation planning for communities. And they are very engaged with our community at this point in time. They began work earlier this year and have been hard at work on the process of assessing what the hopes and dreams and wishes of our community are for parks and recreation related items. The Parks and Recreation Board, Advisory Board, is heavily engaged in this process. In fact, they are the appointed steering committee, citizen steering committee for the project. So they are kind of operating in their capacity as both a Parks and Rec Board as well as a steering committee for this very significant project. To date, where we're at and where we're going is Green Play and Parks and Rec Board and staff. I also want to note that our staff, in particular, Ryan Potter, our senior planner, has been helping to lead and guide this from the staff perspective, has done a really good job and has been working hard to help move this process through. Green Play has compiled and presented a demographics report back in September to the Parks and Rec Board. They have done one of the more significant pieces of this. They held a public open house. They've held some committee meetings and stakeholder meetings. But the surveying piece of this, where we really engage into asking just as many people in the community as possible to weigh in. So the first phase of the public input survey, or the public opinion survey, is completed now, and that actually gets mailed out to. It was mailed out to 3,500 of our residents, or our actual addresses in town. And this is a statistically valid survey. We're guaranteed a statistically valid response, which means that we have to have a certain percentage met of responses from those 3,500 of just basically a random surveying of the community. We hit 16% return, which is about 506 responses. That 16% may not sound like a tremendous amount, but that is well beyond what is expected for a statistically valid response. It's actually a very good response. So that has been completed, and the consultant Green Play is in the process of essentially compiling all of the results of that, and that will be all put into a report. The next, or the second phase of the public input survey is we basically, if you weren't one of the 3,500 residents or homes that received the survey, anybody can participate and can respond to the same survey questions. So that is an open link that will be sent out. It's an open website link, kind of response type of a thing, that is currently launching and will be publicized via the city's social media, our e-blasts, our email lists, and just various other means. So this is also part of the process of hopefully people listening this evening to this meeting, knowing that you can, in the very near future, you can go onto the city's website and just work your way through, or even just put into the navigator bar that you're looking for the Parks and Rec survey, and anybody can participate and respond to that. So that's the second phase of the public opinion surveying. They have also, the committee and the consultant have also completed what's called a level of service analysis, which documents essentially the degree to which the city's current facilities and programs are serving the community, and where we can improve, or specific recommendations that will come out of where we might want to consider future parks, where existing parks might want to be improved, and things of that nature. So that is that level of service analysis has been completed, and again, this will all be presented in some kind of a final presentation that will work its way back to the council. The consultant has also been meeting with our staff. In particular, they've met with our city's park staff to gather some information on park maintenance activities and operations and needs. So that will be part of this, as well as the maintenance and operations recommendations that will come out of this. So in essence, they are well into the meat of this process, and the process is moving along well. I discussed this with our Parks and Rec Board Chair, Barry Johnson, earlier today, in fact, and Barry expressed that he was pleased with how this has been going so far, and it sounds like the process has been fairly well received, and I think it's been a good community process. We will be, so what we're looking at as far as kind of the final stretch of this now is, you know, the big push here has been compiling lots of community input, interviews, surveys, lots of data analysis and research, and then pulling all of that together. And that will be pulled together here in the coming weeks ahead. And we're anticipating a final product being done in somewhere around January or possibly early February. Now they may have a preliminary sort of a high level report for us sooner than that, and if that's the case, we'll certainly give the council a heads up on that. But that's kind of the timeline that we're looking at. But so where this goes then is there will be a final report prepared that will be presented to the Parks and Recreation Board, and they will then make some perhaps have some additional input, or perhaps make some modifications, or make some further recommendations. But essentially, that will be presented to the Parks and Rec Board, and then that will be forwarded to the council for sort of a final presentation. And I would envision the consultant actually coming and helping us staff make a final presentation to you and explaining what we're looking at there. So wanted to make you aware that's where we're at on that process, and it is moving ahead and moving along well. And just wanted to announce that, and also see if council has any questions or any further comments on any of that.
Scott, thank you for that piece on updating. Like, it was interesting. A couple of things that popped out in the conversation, that just kind of some nuggets for the council here, is that based on their initial, I guess, first blush here at a couple of things regarding our parks, is that they took kind of their rating system that they use for our parks, and then put that up against kind of like their national ranking of based on parks and things that they have worked on, and or just parks in general across the country. And so Camby rated fairly high and received a top rating for developable parkland, but we ranked below average in actual developed parkland. And so when that report comes out, you'll see just kind of like cities around us that in terms of where they ranked in their developed parkland, and what type of parks they have a list in terms of recommendations to meet certain, I guess, park criteria, or a balance of different types of parks or park amenities. And they, in terms of looking at access to parks, and so they looked at, there's two sections of the city of Canby without parks, or that, and I don't even know fully if we have parks planned for these areas. Well, I take that back. So one area without parks that didn't have good access to parks was North Camby and Northeast Camby. And so it was just a very interesting, as we're seeing a lot more development occurring there on the north side of town. What does that mean for some park development on that side of town? So it was quite interesting for sure. Councilor Parker, you had a question or comment?
Well, first of all, some gratitude in particular to you, Mayor. I know it's been a busy year for you, and the fact that you've been able to be the liaison to the Parks Committee. Thank you for taking time and getting there. And also to the committee, and especially the chair, Barry Johnson. I think I talked to him about a year and a half ago about this process, and said it was going to be intense and a lot of work. And in fact, it's probably been a little bit more. So my thanks to Barry and the committee for heading this up. Scott, I liked the process of having the consultants wrap up their work, present it to the Parks Committee. What I'd like to see is the recommendation of the consultant. Secondarily, a recommendation from the Parks Committee to the council. And thirdly, especially given the background that you have, would it be possible, would you consider at the same time that we hear the consultant's report and the recommendations from the Parks Committee, that we also get a city manager's list of recommendations? I'd like us to have the basis for an action plan. Nobody wants this to sit on the shelf. We don't want to have a death by work session. We've had a robust public outreach, and frankly, I'd like to hear, one, what the consultants have to say, two, what the Parks Committee have to say, and third, your recommendations on where we should proceed. So that's my position on that.
Thank you, Councilor Parker. Councilor Spoon?
Yeah, I was going to say something else, but I'd rather just first say that I agree with Councilor Parker. I don't want this to sit on the shelf for long. I would love if in very short order after the Parks Master Plan comes back from the consultant, that we have both of those things, a recommendation from the committee and a recommendation from you, Scott. One of the reasons I loved you as an applicant is because of your robust history and experience in parks. And I would really love your input based on those decades working in parks, in addition to what the Parks Committee says. And for the sake of letting this conversation continue, Mayor, I'll wait to ask my other questions. So if you can come back to me after that, that'd be great.
Okay. Councilor Bajoran.
All right, yeah, I just want to comment on the fact that I do support what Councilor Parker and Councilor Spoon have said. I want to see, as much expert insight reports as we can. The more information we have, the better, that we can actually act on. These parks obviously are important to the community, and we need to see as much progress on that as possible. So,
agreed. So, Councilor Spoon, did you want to ask your question now or later?
If Scott's good with that recommendation and ask, then I'll move on. So I have related to parks and the master plan and the future of parks. I've had multiple conversations, probably Scott would stop talking to him about it, but about a project that was left in limbo after it was seemingly greenlit a long time ago. And from my perspective, it's a project that was kind of shelved halfway through and is partially done and incomplete. So I would love to get some consensus that at the next city council meeting, we have a conversation about the dog park and see if we can advance that even before the master plan is complete. Much like the pickleball court and the other things we've been doing, this is a project that's been in motion for quite some time. And I'd like to see us advance on it. I have, with all respect to the Parks and Rec Committee, because they've done so much amazing work on the master plan, but also out of respect for the Parks Committee from 2011 to 2015, want to make sure that we're honoring their work as well. Have even worked with Scott to see if there's a funding source that doesn't use SDC so that we can retain that SDC fund to advance the master plan. And it sounds like we have some options there, given some of our influx in funds. So I would like to see on the next agenda, not a work session, but on the next meeting agenda, a conversation about the dog park and advancing that project.
Okay. Input from the council. Councilor Bangs.
Thank you. Yeah, I would like to see that move as well. I'm excited about this parks master plan, but this is what our park looks like. It's very hard to walk dogs or take your children there and sit on the concept. Is there a process for getting that on the agenda? Could we just put it on the agenda? I'm in favor of doing this and moving forward with it.
When my conversation with Scott here next week, when we start looking at the agendas coming up, we can take a look at it and what we can do about getting that on our next agenda or as quickly as we can. Councilor Jordan.
Yes, absolutely. Back up Councilor Spoon on that dog park. I mean, if you look at some of the community Facebook pages and things like that, obviously it's been talked about a lot. So it seems like people really want that, and it's something that we should definitely look further into and see, why it's been stalled for 8 years.
Okay, thank you, sir. Councilor Parker.
Yeah, I want to thank our city recorder, who's really made access to our archives much easier. What we have been able to come up with, and this is why I would like to see it on the next agenda, is that in fact the Parks Committee already approved this, and we were headed towards construction on it when we hit a recession and everything shut down. And on reflection, maybe there were some procedural things on that maybe shouldn't have happened, but the approval, according to the records and the minutes that we have, that it was already greenlit. So I'm not interested in having us take any funds out of the system development funds for the parks. I'd like to reserve that for the parks master plan. But if there are some other funds that we could use, I'd like to explore that. So I'd like to see that in a staff report at the next meeting.
Any other comments or pieces on the Scott's report?
No, just thank you for all your hard work on it, Scott. I know it's a huge undertaking and you hadn't been here long when it came up. So thank you. I sure appreciate your work and the way you've organized and gotten all of the wheels at the city turning in the same direction. I just looked at an email from 2018 that was going to be an RFP for a parks master plan. So it's nice to see it finally coming to fruition.
I appreciate that, but I do want to emphasize there's a lot of folks are moving that process forward, and I'm glad to have helped kind of give it a shove in the right direction. But yeah, a lot of good work on that. And before we wrap up this piece of my report, I wanted to acknowledge what I've heard about the hopes that when we bring back a final report on the Parks and Rec master plan, that you would also like essentially what would be an action plan presented with that. And I'm hearing that. So I will be prepared to do that and make some recommendations that go along with the Parks and Rec Master Plan. So that's a very appropriate thing. What really excites me about that is I think there are a lot of people that are anxious to see things happening, and I'm happy to help try to get those things moving forward. I did have a couple other things. If were there other questions before I move on? We're good on that. Okay. The next item I had was just a quick update on the downtown quiet zone, railroad safety, and entryway arch project. As I'm sure you all know and have seen the activity going on at our crossings, at least two of our crossings right now so far, the railroad crossings into downtown. That project is moving forward. There's been a lot of construction activity around that, particularly around Elm Street, where we've actually had to close that off at times or narrow it down to just one lane. We thank everybody for their patience. We realize that's an inconvenience, but it will be short-lived. We expect it to be Elm Street will be fully reopened, hopefully by the end of this month. We're moving forward on, if you've gone through the intersection, the crossing at Grant, which is where the new arch will be eventually, you've seen some sort of the footings being prepared. We did a first on those recently, and we'll be doing a second pour for the footing foundations either later this week or early next week, somewhat weather dependent and somewhat dependent on the progress of the work, but very soon. And the arch itself, though you don't see it yet, is actually being worked on because it's such a significant piece of the work. It is actually already constructed, and it's in the process of being sent to be galvanized as we speak. So that is exciting, and that is actually moving forward so that when it's time to actually place that, it will be ready to go. Actually, speaking of the arch and the foundations, one of the things that we're working on, and city staff, some of our city staff were meeting on the site today at the Grant Street intersection to look at the placement of time capsules in the foundation that we'll be doing. So we'll have some further conversation about that. I think that'll be a really cool thing. And we'll have some plaques that will seal, that will denote and signify those time capsules that were placed on the site. So looking forward to that. Any questions about that project?
Councilor Spoon?
Yeah, do we have a timeline on the arch? Someone asked me. I got very excited seeing the footings go in, but everyone was like, what is that? why is there giant concrete construction happening? So any idea on the timeline for the arch?
I don't know, but I can find out what the installation of the arch timeline is. What I do know is that the whole of the project with the upgrades of the intersections and the arch is anticipated to be completed in the early spring. So I don't know how far in advance the arch will be placed, because there will be some lighting to be installed and some work on that. So I can look into that timeline. I'm sure people are going to be very excited to see when that goes up, and it'll create a lot of conversation. So I'll find out about that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The mayor had mentioned earlier about some of our FEMA recovery money from the February ice storm. I was going to mention about that, but I think the mayor did a good job of updating that. I did want to note that, so yes, we're receiving about $217,000 for just the general debris cleanup. That is just a direct reimbursement that we're going to receive, and then we'll be receiving some funds, and we're still working on. Actually, Mayor Hodson, you noted something appropriately, that the cost estimate of removal of what are now deemed as hazard trees because of the storm damage at not just at Waite Park, but at a few of our parks, that the cost actually is exceeding what we have estimated right now for the money that we are anticipating. But if we if we go out and receive some additional bids, we can actually potentially increase that FEMA amount that we'll receive. I did want to just kind of double up on what the mayor said about the Waite Park trees in particular. I know that will be something of community interest. That we have, I believe it's 11 trees that have been identified as being essentially pretty significant hazards, and that we're going to need to talk about the removal of those sooner than later. And that's something that we'll be working our way through. And then what might follow on that is, with the prior discussion about the Parks and Rec master plan, is perhaps some type of recommendation for an enhanced master plan specifically for that site, and what we want to envision for the future of Waite Park. But we're going to be working through that. And I wanted to note on the FEMA stuff that that is working with the federal government can be a very intense process. It's time consuming. There are a lot of hoops to jump through. And I want to note that our public works staff, in particular, Jerry Nelzine and Rhonda Roselle, and some of our finance team, and even Melissa, our recorder and HR director, had to provide some assistance to help put all this together. But that reimbursement is not just simply filling out a couple forms and submitting it to the federal government. It is a massive project just to get that, and I want to thank our staff for those efforts. Also wanted to announce and remind people that we are having this year our downtown trick or treat at our downtown businesses that wish to participate. So we encourage trick or treaters to come downtown on Sunday, October 31st, Halloween, from 3 to 6 p.m. in the downtown core. Any participating businesses will be giving out goodies, and we look forward to having that activity in our downtown. So again, on Halloween Day, 3 to 6 p.m. in the downtown area, participating businesses will be handing out treats. Hopefully not too many tricks from the kids. The last thing I have is I just also want to congratulate and welcome our new Councilor Bajoran. On behalf of the city staff, we look forward to working with you. I want to reiterate to you, Councilor, that please feel free to ask of assistance from our staff. We are here and happy to help. Mr. Lindsay and I met with Councilor Bajoran last week to kind of do an initial sort of an orientation and provide him, hopefully not overwhelmed, but provided him some information as to some of the legal components and some of those necessary things that you have to know about. But we sure enjoyed our time meeting with you, and we look forward to working with you. And that concludes my report this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Any other questions or comments regarding our city manager's report? Okay. Next up on the agenda is any additional citizen input. Is Melissa, it does not appear that we've had anyone else jump in and wish to address the council. So we'll go to action review.
Okay, you have passed ordinance numbers 1563 and 1562 to second readings on November 3rd, and adopted ordinance numbers 1560 and 1561 and approved the consent agenda.
Perfect. Thank you, Melissa. Appreciate that. Next is the adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn? So
I move to adjourn. I've got 3 years.
Well, Councilor Parker gave the wave, so Council President Hensley, will you second the motion to? Okay, motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor for adjourning this evening, show hands. I see 5, 6, no 5. I can count. Anyone opposed? All right, we are done. We are adjourned. Camby, thank you. Have a great evening. Council, thank you very much. Staff, thank you. See everybody soon.